A while back, we talked about the possibility of The Amazing Spider-Man 3, and while I do want that kind of story to happen, I do think it would be really cool to utilize a character like Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man and tell a story. There really has been no updates on all of that. I mean, Andrew was asked in multiple interviews about that kind of question, and also about where his Spider-Man would be now. All these different things, we covered some of those, and I think his answers were interesting. But in general, he has also reiterated that he doesn't think he's coming back for any kind of third installment, and that's just where it's sat. Now, personally, I do think that a character like that will return in something like Avengers, Secret Wars, or Doomsday, just some kind of multiversal story. And I know a lot of people are sick of the multiverse, but for me, when I'm looking at the multiverse, I never understood what the point is of even using it if it's just for cameos. You know, if you're not actually going to use it to visit different worlds and show what makes them different and show why they matter and tell an interesting story there, what's the point of it? And that kind of leads us to today's video topic, which is about Spider-Man 4. Now, not the MCU one, but Tobey Maguire. Now, those of you who have followed the story around this, you probably know that, especially if you're as old as me, that Spider-Man 4 was at one point happening. They were gearing up for making it. There were actual storyboards and concept art made, and there was even a video game in development actively starting to be developed alongside the film. But of course, as well, they were rushing Sam Raimi with Sony, and he already felt like he didn't deliver a good film with Spider-Man 3. He was already disappointed with it, and so he pretty much backed out, and they had to pull the plug on the entire thing. The cast left. That's what led to Andrew Garfield. And then, of course, eventually, The Amazing Spider-Man 2 did not land where Sony wanted it to. They kind of kicked Garfield to the curb, and eventually they moved to Tom Holland with the MCU. But if this is true, there could be a very interesting update to the whole thing around Spider-Man 4, and there could possibly be life in it in the future. So I do want to get into that today, but if you enjoy this video, you want to leave a like, subscribe, or hype the video, any of that stuff, it helps me out a lot. And I do have a question of the day for you, which is not just Spider-Man, but if there is one version of a superhero you could go back and get one more movie out of, who would it be? You know, we almost got Michael Keaton's Batman again. We did get him in The Flash, but he almost got, actually used in the DCEU. But there's so many different characters out there. There's like Punisher, Ghost Rider, Blade, a lot of different characters who have had versions that are pretty much done. Who would you want to see? Now, I will be leaving the sources in the description below so you can read through these statements themselves, but there are multiple from Sam Raimi all the way to Mattson Tomlin, who also is working on The Batman Part 2. He's the co-writer of it, so he's a pretty big deal as well. And Sam Raimi was asked a while back about this when he was doing Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness, and he had said, well, I haven't heard about that yet. I did read that in terms of Spider-Man 4, being a possibility because it's been talked about for years, but I'm not actually working on it yet. I mean, Marvel and Columbia are so successful with current Spider-Man movies and the track there, and I don't know that they're going to go back to me and say, well, folks, we can also tell that story. Now, Sam Raimi had also mentioned at the time saying, I'm not sure, but I love all the new Spider-Man movies. I loved Spider-Man No Way Home. It was really super powerful seeing Tobey again in it. And I think that's how a lot of people felt. A lot of people felt really, probably a lot of it was nostalgia, absolutely, but they felt kind of like a kid again. Seeing these characters that they grew up with, like whether it's Andrew or Tobey, reprising that role alongside Tom. They really loved that. Now, multiple people have thrown their hat in the ring with comments on this, but one of the most interesting to me is Mattson Tomlin, who is the co-writer on The Batman Part 2, who actually expressed interest over on Twitter, or X, whatever you want to call it, saying, honestly, right now, my main interest in this respect would be to write Spider-Man 4, where Tobey's Spider-Man is juggling being a husband and a father. Spider-Man as a father is where I gravitate towards, given the last 8 films. And this was in response to, if asked to write a screenplay, would you have interest or a vision for your take on Spider-Man? This is one of the things that actually kicked all of this off. This was actually back in July, so July 30th. But also there have been comments not just from him, but also from Tobey Maguire and Kirsten Dunst as well. And Sam Raimi again. Now, what's interesting is that Tobey Maguire, who is pretty much the principal person you need interested in this if it's ever going to happen, did return without Sam Raimi's involvement to No Way Home. So that's already hugely important, because one reason the cast was not interested in doing Spider-Man 4 in the first place was Sam Raimi washing his hands of it. They wanted him, or they didn't want to do it. But Tobey was willing to come back, actually, for No Way Home, even though it wasn't the main starring role, without Sam. And when asked if he would be interested in suiting up again as Spider-Man in a potential Spider-Man 4, Maguire was actually very enthusiastic, saying yes, saying, why wouldn't I want to do that? So right there, he's already interested just in general. Raimi went on to also say that he didn't really have a story or a plan right now, if he was to do that when he was asked. But what's interesting about that is Mattson Tomlin is the one who came in with a plan and a pitch and said that he was actively contacting people and trying to show interest in making that movie. So you already have Tobey interested, you have Sam Raimi interested, so you have the primary star and the director, you have the co-writer of the Batman Part 2 interested in telling this story, and like in terms of a writer, you also had Kirsten Dunst showing interest in returning to the role before when asked about No Way Home, saying, I mean, listen, no one asked me about anything, but I do think that, this multi-universe just keeps going on and on. I feel like that could happen. Later, after Mattson Tomlin actually revealed that he had reached out directly to Sam Raimi and he was trying to show interest in this thing, she then had more comments as well saying, that would be cool, right? I don't know if the fans are into it. I feel like that is an interesting movie, right? Me and Tobey doing that again, but with kids. With Raimi also expressing more interest, saying, I've come to realize after making Doctor Strange that anything is possible. Really anything in the Marvel Universe. Any team-ups. I love Tobey, I love Kirsten Dunst. And this is actually where some of his comments came from that I read before, because I'm jumping through like 7 different articles here to try to get the story straight for you guys. But saying, I think all things are possible. I don't know if he's had like some kind of new age awakening here, but it seems like Sam Raimi is in a very positive place. Saying, I don't really have a story or plan. I don't know if Marvel would be interested in that right now. I don't know what their thoughts are about that. I haven't really pursued that, but it does sound beautiful. And then saying, even if it wasn't a Spider-Man movie, that he'd love to work with Tobey again, even if it was in a different role because he liked him so much. Now, this all culminated in the most recent comments from Mattson Tomlin, who actually went on to say that he was still trying and saying that he thought it was funny. I do enjoy the phrasing of all this conjures the image of me dialing random numbers on the phone, holding speakers over my head in the streets, or putting messages in bottles and throwing them into the sea. As funny as that is, unfortunately, unless you're in a high up position with these studios, it is really rough to actually reach out and try to get something made. But did go on to actually say as well, when asked again about this, that slow and steady wins the race. There won't be anything to say about that for a long time, if ever. Making sure that people know that it might not happen because it involves a lot of people and politics and things going right that have nothing to do with me. But I haven't gotten a no yet. So that's what's interesting to me, is that this was brought up essentially back in the end of July of 2025. We're now in October, now we're in November. We were at the end of October. Now we're in November of 2025. And as of October 25th, he still had not heard a no, which is interesting because I think Sony is not ridiculously stupid. Now, you might disagree with me because they did make movies like Madam Web, but I do think that they can look at and see that there is an interest in these older versions of Spider-Man. And I also think that they can look at the comic books that are going on with Marvel and see how negative the fan reception, at least online, has been to where Peter Parker is. They can look at the reception to things like the Ultimate Spider-Man comics, see how positive the reception was to that, like an older Peter who's married, has a life, and things like that. And even if they ever did want to do their own thing again as well on the side, like they were really trying to do that with things like Kraven the Hunter and Madam Web and even the Venom movies, which those actually did work out for them. But if they ever wanted to do anything like that again, you would kind of need to go your own direction. You would need to set up a way that you can take things. And one way that you could take things is having Tobey Spider-Man essentially back and eventually leading to something like Spider-Girl. Now, would I want those movies made just for the purpose of Spider-Girl? No, you'd have to have a good story for Spider-Man. But Spider-Girl has been a pretty celebrated character since the 90s, before somebody just croaks in and calls it woke. This was a character that was back in the 90s, and people loved her. People loved Mayday. People really liked seeing that Marvel 2 universe, essentially. And I do feel like you could actually tell compelling stories there, where you could have a few more movies with Tobey, and you could eventually lead into Spider-Girl, or you could tell other stories. But if they don't ever want to explore that, then they're just going to be essentially stuck doing whatever the MCU wants, which they can do, absolutely. But a lot of people haven't enjoyed the way that the Spider-Man movies have been done to this point in the MCU. Like, there is still a subsection of people that you can kind of find that want a different take on Spider-Man. There's a huge section of people who did like MCU Spider-Man who would be open to seeing another version of the character. There's a pretty big audience as well who just love Tobey Maguire. You know, there's a lot of things that you could do here to actually branch off. And my thing is, if DC is out here and the comments from people like James Gunn are that the general audience is smart enough to figure out if you have the Batman, but you also have Batman in the DCU, why aren't people smart enough to figure that out with Marvel? You know, why couldn't you tell these stories alongside Tom Holland's Spider-Man? I've never really understood why it has to be one or the other, especially with a character this big. And you could have that more brand synergy MCU Spider-Man who teams up with people and does whatever you want. And you could have more of this solo Spider-Man who raises a child and has a marriage and all these different things on that side as well. There really doesn't have to be one or the other. I've never understood why these studios think there has to be one or the other when it is a character that is such a household name. If it was just some random character that wasn't guaranteed to sell movies, I totally get why they wouldn't want two versions. But Spider-Man? There has never been a Spider-Man movie in the box office that's done anywhere remote to not extremely profitable. Like, they're always extremely profitable. Even the worst of them are profitable. So it's just bizarre to me that there even is a holdup that they never really went back and looked at this idea before. I hope it happens, but let me know what you think in the comments down below. If you enjoyed this video, you want to leave a like, subscribe, all that stuff helps me out a ton. I do appreciate you very, very much trying to get these videos out to people. So if you like this channel and you know a friend that would like it, share the channel with them. Appreciate you. Also, as well, we do have more products on cosmobunny.shop, our own store. We have handmade one-of-a-kind items over there, coasters, keychains, trays, and more. If you like the subject of this video, I'm sure you can find something over there you do like. What we do is we take comic books, manga, magazines, books that are damaged or can't be sold. We give them new life through this medium, creating new art in a transformative way, and then we recycle the rest. Now, discount code DJAY123 will get you 10% off your first purchase. Have a fantastic day, and as always, everyone, stay shway.